Hello, hello. You can all probably hear me out there. Can't see me currently, which is fine. Just having a little fun with our Discord call. We'll get it fixed up shortly. But how are you all doing? Just let me know how you are. It's a Thursday. It's it's a nice good old Thursday. Being a Thursday, doing Thursday things. Uh Named for Thor. It's it's Thursday. It's not raining here though, so it's not very Thory on Thursday. So that's a thing. Let's tell you what. Let's spend some time while I wait for the Discord call to work. Right, exactly, Ray. If you could have been here, it would have worked. Let's look at Jedi for a second while we wait for the Discord call to work. This is Burry. I love Burry. Burry is so good. And then this is Loden. Great Storm. It's a great name. I really liked at the end of the book when they connected his name being Great Storm to the storm and all of and that. Does anyone out there know how you would pronounce this? So, Django was telling me he's just pronouncing it Marchian or something like that. I was going like French with it. It was like Marchand. I don't know. Did anybody do the audiobook who could tell me how are you pronouncing the guy's name? There's Bell. Love Bell. He's a good dude. There's Avar. This is all the concept art that I have found currently. There's a lot, but this for the people in this book. I know there's more characters. Marchian. That's not how it's saying it in my head at all, but I'll believe you guys. Oh, I think Django, if you can hear me, no one can see us. Can you hear me? Okay, Django's with me. His mic is not open on the stream's end, but oh, you guys didn't see the Google search. Okay, we'll go in. Now you can hear Django. And here we are. Ta-da!
Hi!
We were looking at concept art. And we were discussing how to pronounce the I's name. That's pretty much all you've missed.
Oh, okay. What's the consensus?
Ray says March in.
That would be a very Star Wars kind of thing to try to make it sound like a phrase or something.
Right. God bless you. We also have Jeff in the chat now. He pronounced it Martian. See, that's what I did too. I went French with it. He has zero idea if that's correct, but I like how it sounds. That's what I did. I was like, I don't know why. I don't know what about this. Here, I'll go back to it and we'll experience this. I don't know what it is about this guy that screams French to me. Absolutely nothing. But I'm like, I have to.
It is about this guy that screams.
She's up in the stream there.
Yeah, I was pulling up the chat on my phone.
Anyway, welcome. This is a classic Port Haven StreamCast right here.
Yep, going old school today.
With some issues. But thank you all for being here. We're going to discuss Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Not Charles Soule's first Star Wars story, but his first novel. Not his first novel either, but his first Star Wars story that is a novel. The first time the two bubbles. What's it called? It's the diagram. Venn diagram. I was going to say diaphragm, and that's not correct.
I do have an important question before we really get into stuff.
Okay.
Do you think that younglings have to sleep with a night light of the Jedi?
I like that. That's funny. I would say that we could call this book a highlight of the Jedi.
You probably could. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
No, on that note, though, I gotta say, in all seriousness, this book is definitely in my top Star Wars novels ever. Like, not necessarily even just canon. It might be my new favorite canon novel, previously held by Master and Apprentice. Uh, and it's good. Like, it's, I don't know. How are you feeling having finished?
I mean, I like it a lot. It's hard for me to. It's almost the way you feel about Guardians of the Galaxy when people ask you to rank Marvel movies. Like, it just feels like a different thing.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's hard for me to know, like, where it fits in terms of, like, other novels. But it's definitely probably in my top 3. Especially because it has one of my favorite things in Star Wars novels, and that is discussions of the Force.
Yes.
Like, if all I had gotten was one character talking about how the Force was music, then like that would have been sufficient for me. Like, I would have needed nothing else. Like, that was just those paragraphs like vaulted it up into. I did think about you though. Was it Elzar who sees it as like an ocean?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how terrifying that would be for you.
If I saw the forest,
if you were a Jedi.
I have so many fears of waves. Welcome, Skynobi. It's great to see you. And Ray says, plot twist, how many puns can you make with Light of the Jedi? Oh, we'll get there. Just wait. So for those of you who don't know, I have a phobia of tidal waves, which does not get triggered often because tidal waves don't happen often where I am, but it makes watching movies with tidal waves very difficult. And not even just tidal waves, but like big waves. So as much as I love The Rise of Skywalker, like the scene where Rey's on the skipper and she's going to the Death Star was hard for me. That was very, especially in IMAX, and I'm like, I love you, I will stay with you, and it was very painful.
I mean, at the very least, you don't have friends that like bring it up. Ever.
And you play with fire, because I know your phobias.
I can just not look at images you send me.
When you were sending me WandaVision theories and you had all of the beeswax, I was like, how does that not mess with your other sensory?
Yeah. Because the brain is a fun thing. But like even later on, and I know this is something you want to talk about, but I don't know if it's something we want to get into right at the beginning. But toward the end of the novel, where like the council is meeting and trying to decide what they want to do.
Yep.
And they're like, well, what does it mean to do the will of the Force?
Yep.
And I forget which character it was, but they're like I'm just going to do what feels right and assume that that's what the will of the Force is. Like, why are we complicating this? Like, that's the type of thing I really love, and I feel like that's also why I really liked Master and Apprentice, because it had a lot of like, what is the Force? What does it mean? Kind of stuff, and that's the Empire lover in me. That's the Mortis lover in me.
Yep.
Like that's one of my favorite things about Star Wars.
I agree. I found it's the interlude called The Council in the book, which is around page 297. Unfortunately, Skynobi says his book's stuck in customs. That sucks.
It does suck.
So I hope you get yours soon. Ray liked the discussion of how Jedi see the Force, which is definitely something I want to talk about too. It was Jorah Mali who was the one who said that at the end. So it's the one who
I thought it probably was
supposed to get the Starlight Beacon. That whole discussion was really interesting to me. And what I liked about that discussion with the council as well wasn't just what was being said. And like, obviously there's ultimately a resolution because there's the person who cast the deciding vote. But what I liked about it was that it was a discussion. That it wasn't, wow, you Force heretic. How could you say that? And, there wasn't like the council feeling a certain way with like a maverick Qui-Gon Jinn. And I like that element of Star Wars that we get in the prequels. But it was really cool to see the Jedi kind of functioning as I don't know if body's the right word, but like as a group and really had, like, you would assume a council of Jedi Masters wouldn't actually all agree all the time on how the Force works, right?
Right.
And so that was what I liked, was seeing that there were these two different schools of thought, and it both kind of had points to me. The idea
Right.
of like rushing off and getting involved in the fight, we've seen in Legends with the Mandalorian Wars, we've seen with the Clone Wars, doesn't always go well for the Jedi. But
Right.
then there's other Jedi making really good points about how, like, you can't just let things happen. And
Right.
I appreciated the discussion as opposed to the, well, the Jedi went to war and then they died. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and I think that's one of the things that I think is interesting too. Kind of 2 points here. One, like, I wonder if we just don't have enough of the like Force perspectives of prequel era Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
or if there has been a reduction in the variety of ways. Like, there's a more uniform, this is what the Force is kind of dogma
Yeah.
that they're taught, and there's less room for that interpretation of what the Force is over the course of those hundreds of years, and maybe even as a result of what ends up being the result of this arc. But also it makes me wonder, like, do the Jedi not have some type of institutional memory?
Right.
Like, I know we're still several hundred years out from and it's Legends anyway.
Yeah.
But with the Mandalorian Wars, I'm like, you've literally had this conversation before.
Right.
Like, does nobody like, can you not, like, obviously there's nobody still alive, I guess, although, we know that there are some long-lived Jedi Masters,
Mm-hmm.
but most of them died after,
Right.
if that was canon, most
Right.
of them died after the Mandalorian Wars anyway.
Yeah.
But, like did nobody write it down?
Right.
Like,
this could be a problem. Well, I really
Yeah.
wonder how this will eventually tie into the Clone Wars discussion, because Yoda is alive right now.
Right.
Not Grandmaster leading the whole order. When you he's pops up in Cavan's comic too, but he's currently in Daniel Jose Older's world, so he's occupied from the council currently, and we'll get more of him in February. But I kind of wonder if we'll see Yoda's willingness to go along with the Clone Wars, if that pops out of this conflict with the Nile going well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's something I really want, and this is my own personal bias, because I just want Yoda to be the most important person, even if it's not always in a good light. I really want the idea of the prequel Jedi to be like Yoda's Jedi. And like somewhere around the High Republic, Yoda kind of starts taking over. And like that's kind of the issue, is that it became less a council and more like, well, Yoda's like freaking old and this is what he said, so let's go with that.
Well, and I kind of got the impression just from the mentions of Yoda in Light of the Jedi that like being the youngling person is kind of a new thing for him.
Yeah.
And like, if that's the case, then you have, like in between 400 or 500 years worth of Jedi where you have personally been the first teacher that every single person in the order had.
Yep.
Like, that gives you an opportunity to have an influence on the direction of things.
That's true.
Even if it's unintentional. Like, I don't know that he's like, intentionally shifting like how the order works, but like it's gonna have an effect.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So that was just, there's a lot to kind of parse out in that particular chapter, but just my overall reaction to that discussion, to that interlude, was just that I thought it was cool that was happening.
Right. Well, and it's like, so I think I don't know if it's my favorite character. I think my favorite character is Avar, like just far and away. But the character that I think I would be is Elzar.
Yeah.
Because like, he's just the weird guy that wants to go and like, I just want to study philosophy over here by myself. Like, please, just whatever I gotta do to make you people leave me alone, so I can just go over here and figure out my own things about the Force.
Yeah.
Like, that is a, as the children say, that's a whole mood for me.
Right.
Like, that's
that's
what I would be as a Jedi.
I love that, and I liked the at first friendship, but then we learn it's a friendship between him and Avar. But I liked that she's this she basically brings him along as her partner because she's like, well, I gotta get him. He needs to be a master. He's gonna go insane. So like, I'm gonna bring him
Right.
along on this mission so he can do that. Real quick, wait. Ray says also feels like the prequel Jedi are way more contracted. In a way, like they stay closer to Coruscant and the main temple versus what we've seen. Yeah, the Jedi are not out in the middle of everything, and that becomes a discussion.
Part of that is right, and I think part of that is going to be a side effect of the expansion of the Republic and these hyperspace lanes. Once it's easier to just go anywhere at a moment's notice, there's no need to have all of these various outposts that we see. Like the one is it Elfrana? Is that the planet where the one where the kidnapping happens?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the planet, but I know what you're talking about. It's on the cover. It's on the thumbnail. It's on the cover of the special edition. But yeah, where the family gets kidnapped.
Right, or even like the new temple.
Oh, I'm just remembering how. Okay, sorry. The end of this book was it was so good. Okay,
there was a lot happening all at once.
Keep going now.
But I'm just gonna say, and like they called it a temple, but on Starlight Beacon, but that seems to be like a formality and not like the way we've seen other Jedi. Like you don't have to stand on Lothal and like raise it up out like it's just. This is the conference room on Starlight Beacon. You know, you got it's one of those. It's a big ballroom, but they have like the sliding partition down the middle, like at the airport Hilton or something.
I love that. Hey XY, welcome. It's good to see you again. Hope you've been well. Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. Like, just to kind of go to with how much do people know about the Jedi, and so there's still this idea of people like, oh, there's a Jedi and they can do mystical things, and just the different knowledge levels people had for them was cool to see too. The book, according to Jeff, the book got me ready for the future Evar Elzar rom-com. Gonna be great. That would be a great rom-com.
See, but now what I want like a WandaVision, like Dick Van Dyke rom-com with Evar and Elzar. Like that's what I want. Like black and white, set in space, 1940.
I like it. I think we can pitch it. That'll be good.
I mean, we might have people in near months here that we could pitch things to. So.
Hey. True. But to go back a second though, because I don't want to forget to talk about the way Jedi see the Force. I thought that was really cool discussion. And it kind of makes me want to talk about Evar because you and I both really liked her. And I didn't expect to not like her, but when I read like the Jedi description, she wasn't somebody that really jumped out at me. And then, from jump, there were like some obvious, whether or not they were intentional, there were obvious Bastila Shan connections because of the battle meditation.
Right.
But I really liked her character. I liked how she kept referring to the Force as a song, which was something very unique to other Jedi. Most Jedi talk about, like, the few times that there has been a visualization of the Force, it's either been something visual or a feeling. It's never been sound. And I thought that was a really cool distinction. But I found her character just worked for me. And I didn't know how else to describe it other than just likable. You know, usually a Jedi playing her role in the story has a bit more arrogance, or is always like I have to be more proper or whatever. She was just out there, like living her life and doing Jedi stuff, you know?
Well, and I think part of that is a difference because like she is like one of, if not the main character of the book, but she is not at that place in the Jedi hierarchy.
Yes.
So like she is presented as a main character in a way that she's not an organizational. I mean, by the end of the book, she's taken on that role.
Yeah.
Or at least for Starlight, so like in the Outer Rim.
Yep.
But like institutionally, she's not that way. So like she has an opportunity to like do her thing.
Yep.
Which I want to say includes one of my favorite uses of the Force ever, and that's to tie up her hair.
Yeah, that was so cool. Like,
I'm gonna float here. I'm gonna do my battle meditation, and I'm also gonna braid my hair.
to contrast that to, like, Attack of the Clones, where Anakin's, like, cutting up a pear, and he's like, Master Obi-Wan would be very grumpy that I'm cutting up a pear. I mean, to be fair, Master Obi-Wan would always be grumpy, so I don't know if it really would have been the pear. But, you know.
It makes me think, too, of the New Jedi Order books that we were reading.
Oh, yeah.
When Mara's, like, all over Anakin because Anakin wants to, like, move a crate with the Force, and she's like, no, man, you gotta use those muscles. Like, you can't just use the Force for any old thing.
Mm-hmm. I really liked, too, something that I haven't seen since, I think it was, like, the Jedi Academy trilogy in Legends. There was it was when Avar and Elzar made a rainstorm. They, like, used the Force to make weather. And there's a Jedi, I think his name was Streen in Legends, who could use the Force to make weather. I don't think it was explained in as a beautiful or poetic way. Young Jess was like, he's like Storm from X-Men, only he's a Jedi, and that's all the thought I put into it. But I thought that was really cool, just the way of, like, oh, let's see if we can make a rainstorm to cool down the things.
Right. But there's a lot of that kind of stuff, like, even, I mean, and a lot of it's even, like, subtle, like, not even, like, big philosophical points, but, like, with the vectors, the, like, fighters that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, one, I like that they're lightsaber locked, so you have to put your saber in there.
Yep.
But, like, that they're built to be controlled with the Force if you have to.
Yep.
So that, like, I could, like, was it Indira at one point who was flying, like, two of them at once?
Yep, that
like,
was her.
Like I just love that, like, that intentionality. Like, like, that's, I mean, I don't know if it's just an advance in ship design by the time of the prequel, or, you know, just, like, a different mindset of the writers.
Yeah.
But it shows a willingness to do more creative things with the Force than we've really seen in a lot of different things so far. And it could be that, you know, in universe, those things would have existed and we just haven't seen them.
Right.
But I really like that a lot.
I like that too. In the chat, a couple people are talking about people seeing, like, normal people seeing the Jedi and how they respond to it. XY brought up something from Twilight Company, which I think you just recently reread, when Namir ran into Vader. I like seeing that kind of connection too, because even to go to that weather scene, that was where, you know, they're doing this and everyone's like, what are the Jedi doing? Are they freaking... I loved the hacker guy that came up with the system with all of the computers too. I can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah.
But he was really cool throughout the story, and I liked...
Like Kavar, something?
Something sounds right. But I liked the idea, because it's normal in Star Wars to have that kind of, like, super smart tech character, but I liked that he also kind of believed in the Republic, that he was like, you know, he probably could have found a way to work the system and move up, but he wanted to kind of, like, earn his way to the top of the totem pole, and I thought he was an interesting character compared to the other hackers we've seen.
Well, and speaking of other characters I just really liked, I really got into the ship captain in the first chapter.
Yeah!
I was like, man, she's cool. Like, I'm excited to see more of her. And then, like, oh, no, well, never mind. Like, that didn't go well. So
here's a question I have for you with the opening chapter. I can't tell if this was intentional in the novel, if I wasn't picking up on something... but it took me a little while to figure out just what the Great Disaster was supposed to be. I didn't pick up on it until, like, the second part. Because for a while, that ship blew up, and I thought whatever blew up that ship was what was heading to Hetzel. Like, I thought that was, like, the first, like, when they had the emergencies and the things coming, I was, like, thinking super literally, and I was like, oh, the Nile were, like... coming through weird hyperspace things, and they crashed into this ship that was so many parsecs out, and then you get closer to Hetzel, and then it was only after a while I was like, oh no, Hetzel's being hit with pieces of the ship, and I don't know if I was just not connecting it, but I felt like the beginning kind of was like really leaving you to wonder what was even happening, and then it was in part 2 when they have like that meeting with the Chancellor where it was like, no, this is what happened. This is what the emergencies are. This is what's going on.
Right. I mean, I guess I don't really know. It's hard for me to gauge because, like, part of the issue I had with reading this book, if there was a problem,
Right.
is that I read Cavan's picture book first, and like, so I had the whole first part like already, like I knew what was going on before I read that part of the novel.
Mm-hmm.
So like I knew it was part of the Legacy run, right?
Yep.
And that's
Legacy run. Yep.
Like I knew that those were parts of it. But I think one of the things I really liked about that, though, and maybe this is just like the nerd in me, and like thinking about like my statistical modeling classes I had in grad school. But like I liked the idea that he was like, oh no, if we just do enough math, we can figure all of this out. Like we can know exactly where all of these pieces are. Like we can just model this thing out. I just need like 10,000 Navidroids to do it, and we can. Like that's it, just 10,000 droids, and then we'll just be able to do it.
Just, used up a little bit of CPU there. No, I thought that was cool too, and I liked that there was that kind of solution. There's so many tangents because there's so much in this book. We won't get through it in our normal time, but I feel like we could talk about any of it forever. But I liked that they still had those kind of science solutions, even with the Jedi, who could do everything. And to kind of go back to what I was saying, I think it was chapter 17, I thought the great disaster was Hetzel was going to get wrecked. So I was reading them trying to stop the pieces of the Legacy run, like, somehow a few of the Jedi that I know are in other things will survive, but, like, they're all about to die. And then...
Right.
And then they, like, stopped the last thing from hitting the sun, and then everyone lived. And I was like, what? I was, like, freaking out, because I literally thought it was going to be, like, a Rogue One situation.
Yeah. It does make me wonder, though, if like, they changed something about, like, Tabana mines between now and then, because, like, the idea that you could just take a Tabana canister and throw it into a sun and... like cause a cataclysm,
right?
Like that's terrifying,
right? You'd think that you would not want to keep that.
Yeah, but I don't know. There are so many tangents, like you're saying. Like I saw Ray in the chat said, like there's so many like super interesting characters that we meet, and then they immediately die and stuff. Or like, oh, what were the husband and wife who were the engineers that were from the short story? In Star Wars Insider.
Yep.
Like I really like them, and I hope we see more of them as we go through things. And just like a little bitty thing, like even like the details about like the Chancellor's pets, things that she like carries around with her, or like the half a chapter they spent describing the mountain on Coruscant, where like everything built up above it except for the peak. Like, there's so many details. Like, they really did a good job, I think Charles Soule did, in this, of creating a new, I don't want to say a new Star Wars universe, but, like setting us in a different place in a different time.
I agree.
Even in just these kind of thematic ways. Like the idea that we're going to shut down, 2 hyperspace lanes, and that means nobody can get around the Outer Rim.
Right.
Or, like, we need Starlight Beacon because we don't have enough transmitters to get messages through.
Right.
Like it's a different, Wild West kind of atmosphere in a way.
I like that. And that kind of takes us into, there's so many things I don't want to miss. Real quick to go to the chapter, because I don't know that there's much discussion for this. The other thing I really liked was, it's weird to say I like this, but I thought it was when all the Jedi were linking minds, how some of the Jedi died in the process made me think of what happens to Luke in The Last Jedi, and I thought that was a good way to ground the Jedi without making them, like, they're doing this big impossible thing, but they're paying a price for it, and I thought that balance was good.
It also reminded me of, is it the Young Jedi Knights series? I don't know if you've read all that, where... like the group of people at the temple, I think it's the temple on Yavin. They're all like either pushing or pull. It's almost like Starkiller and Force Unleashed, except you don't have weird, movements where you have to time it correctly. They're like pushing or pulling a Star Destroyer. Like it made me think about that, where you're all like linking together. And I don't think all of those Padawans survive. I don't think they had the term Padawan in that either. But I like that idea that one, that you can kind of pool your Force reserves from different Jedi, because again, the Force is non-physical. You don't even have to be like Avar was connecting Jedi who weren't even there.
Yeah, she said she felt Yoda like zoom in. You know?
Right. Yoda has joined the call. But I also liked that it takes a toll. That you can do a lot of things with the Force. That you are a conduit for the Force, but that like a resistor or something, you can burn out.
Yeah, and I thought, like, frick, I was gonna say something and then I lost it. But I don't know. I just thought that was a really. I was gonna bring up Clone Wars, the Zillo Beast episode where they dropped the gas on Coruscant, and it's Yoda, Mace, Anakin, Obi, I think, and they're all using the Force to create a bubble together too. So like we see that, but we've never seen it like this scale. Like even when we saw Bastila's battle meditation in KOTOR, like there was nobody like actively feeding back to Bastila. Right. It was just more of like she's sending little messages to everybody else. So I just thought that was just a really cool. Just I don't know how to describe it. Like what I read there.
Yeah. Also, since you brought it up, hashtag the Zillo Beast did nothing wrong.
Zillo Beast did nothing.
Just gotta throw that out there.
If I had gotten a girl gecko instead of a boy gecko, I was gonna name her Zillo, but then I got a boy gecko. I don't know why, but I just felt like Zillo was a girl gecko name. But I wanted to bring up, you were asking me about this. I had it in my notes already, and I just feel like this would be a shame between the two of us if we didn't get to this, because I think this could be an interesting discussion. The Chancellor, and I'm really curious what people out there think. Do you think the Chancellor is like 100% good? Do we just naturally not trust Chancellors because they've not always been well for us in Star Wars? What are your vibes of the Chancellor?
I mean, so what I was telling you yesterday when we were talking about this was I like really vibed with her whole like we are the Republic, like let's do some great works and just try to like in general improve the life for the whole galaxy as much as possible. And I'm like, man, this so matches my politics. And I'm like, well, that probably is not a good thing though, because like that I'm being set up here, because like I think I did feel that tension. Yeah. Because like there's so many things where the politicians end up being like the skeptical, like actual conniving people, and that's I think.
Oh no! Did he freeze again?
Is justified. Okay,
Come back.
Like I don't want to say that she's like. Am I here?
Yes, you are. Yep.
She feels so naive is not the right word. Right. But like idealistic. Yeah. In a way that feels sincere, but that also feels like it could go in a bad way. And like one of the things you said, and I'll let you elaborate on this if you want to, but you said it could be a Dooku kind of thing. Yeah. Where I genuinely do feel like Dooku was a person of actual principle who was seduced by the Sith because of his principle. Yep. And I wonder if it could be something along those lines as we go across.
As seen in Dooku Jedi Lost, which is, I mean, we're referencing Kevin Scott anyway because he helps write the High Republic, but that was a non-High Republic reference. That's kind of the vibe I got off of her. I didn't get any maliciousness off of her, especially because we did get chapters from her own perspective. I think if we didn't, I would be really suspicious of her, but because we did, I don't think she's secretly evil or anything, but I could see her being someone so driven by what she believes in. Like, to me, this could be some of my own politics, but I think anybody who's ever so idealistic to one particular place kind of sets themselves up to failing their own ideology because they believe in it so much. That could just be because I've played Bioshock too many times. I don't know. But
it's just one of those points where our friendship really makes no sense
I
on
know
some
it
levels.
really doesn't. But it's wonderful. That's why I love it. But like I could see it being something like that, because for me, when everyone keeps saying, like, even like the people at Lucasfilm keep, like, and like the authors and everybody keep doing the "we're all the Republic," my natural inclination is when everyone's like, "we are all the Republic," I'm like, "we are all the Republic." Like, after a while, I'm like, this is a little shady. Like, are we all the Republic? Who's the Republic? Are some of us more Republic than others? Like, what's going on here?
It's
I'm naturally
for the children.
for the children. So I'm just naturally suspicious of, like, anything like this. But like, I don't think it's bad, but I'm just like, this is one of those things you set up when you're chancellor, but someday you're not going to be chancellor anymore, and what's the next chancellor going to do?
Right.
So, like, I'm not so much worried about her, I'm worried about her eventual successor.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I wonder too. Like, we've seen. I don't know what we settled on for the pronunciation of the I, but like we've seen him as being somebody that is like planning ahead, like not necessarily on like a Palpatine level,
Right?
but like he engineered everything that happened at the end of the book.
Yeah. Well, when we got to that
like,
too, when he was like,
going on with the kidnapping,
on the radio, I freaked out.
Yeah.
And I was like, I should have seen that coming. I should have known, but I didn't even question it. I was like, this is the planet where you would have that one, like, ham radio enthusiast who would do that.
Right.
Like, I never questioned it.
But, so, like, I don't know if he could, like, somehow manipulate, because we know he has somebody in a senator's office.
Yep.
So I don't know, like, if like that senator will run for chancellor and then do exactly what you just said. You know, like, that's a very Palpatine kind of thing. You know, you switch leaders, and now all of a sudden you're in trouble. I mean, or even like, I know that the whole pitch for this is that this is not a Jedi Sith kind of thing.
Yep.
But we know the Sith are still there.
Right.
And so, like, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, whoever is the Sith at the time aren't hanging back,
right,
you know, in the wings, you know, trying to do something or involve in something. Honestly, I think that'll be a thing that I wouldn't be surprised if we get name drops for a character now that ends up being confirmed as a Sith like 3 or 4 years from now.
It makes me think of Granny Santeca over there.
Oh yeah.
Because, like, which is her name now, Granny Santeca. And, like, because a lot of what she was doing felt like really, really complicated skywalking, to reference, like, Chiss culture. And I kind of wonder if maybe that I don't think she's a Sith per se, unless it's like a really, really deep state Kreia situation or something. I don't know. But, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if she had some sort of Force connection, and that's why things, like, why she was able to do what she was doing, unless she can just do some, like, crazy math. I don't know. But, I'm interested in that, and just seeing the Santeca family, I thought that was so cool.
Right. Well, and I just really got into, like, the whole, like, different way to do hyperspace kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has been a theme lately in Star Wars, you know, with, like, the light speed skipping and the Holdo maneuver. And even, like, with the Kessel run and, like the whole idea that, you know, what is hyperspace? Like, is it, like, because there's several characters here who are, like, asking these questions explicitly. Like, is it, like, another dimension and you jump in and jump back out? Or, like the idea that, like, when they're talking about these paths and they're like, yeah, we just go kind of sideways. I'm like, why? Okay, like, was that not a thing already? Like I was, but yeah. So, like, all this new stuff about how hyperspace works, I really like too.
And it's part of the, like, we go sideways thing, or when you find out that it was the Nile ship that, like, ran into the Legacy run. That's part of what makes me wonder if it's some sort of, like, forced way of using hyperspace. And they're using kind of like a different passage. I also kind of wonder, you brought up hold-on maneuver. Because there's been that question now of like, well, why doesn't everyone just do the hold-on maneuver all of the time? Because like this is what we have to do anytime we get new things. Um, Not that it's an unvalid question, but it's just not always a productive one, I guess. But part of me wonders if maybe people don't do that because of some sort of memory of what happened with these emergencies. And so
Right.
it's like, oh, the devastation of like, if you go into hyperspace and like wreck something through hyperspace, what if there was a danger of Holdo's ship causing emergencies?
Right.
Not that it should, but like maybe that's why people don't do it, because if you don't do it exactly right, you could cause this problem again. And I would buy that as, although I think something like this popped up in Rebels too, if I remember correctly. But just the idea that it's not used often because there could be this consequence of it, I think would be really cool.
Right. I mean, but even to speak of Rebels, like we know that, like the I'm blanking, the space whales.
Oh yeah,
the
Purrgil.
The Purrgil. Yeah, like that they fly through hyperspace.
Yeah.
And so like that's an organic being that can travel through hyperspace. And so I just feel like almost like with the Force, like that's a thing that like I like learning more about it and hearing different things about it. Although now I'm wondering if like hyperspace is just the world between worlds and we're not aware. Like just
the great disaster was caused by Ben Solo flying through space.
Yeah, there you go.
What do we got here? The eye did really, I underestimated him too. I thought it was really cool because at first I was like, oh, I kind of know what this guy's up to. And I'm like, oh, he's got a lot of cards close to the chest. Oh, frick, he really planned this whole thing. Jeff saying something similar too. His plan, so much of what the eye did throughout the book, I don't know if it's, because a lot of times when I'm reading, we'll do this where like we'll both be watching the same thing or reading the same thing, and like you have somehow called all of it, and I haven't because I'm just not thinking about it. I'm like, why would I guess what's gonna happen? I'm just gonna read it. So I, when I got to the end, I was like, I should have seen all of this coming. Like his play at the end of like, well, I know Granny Santeca's gonna die, so I'm just gonna have all of these ready to go, and then I can keep faking that I know what I'm doing for a long time.
Right, because the way he made it seem at the end was that like she has already mapped out most of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Like we could just pop, to the Chancellor's Palace like right now if we wanted to. Yeah. Like all of these places, like we could be there almost instantaneously. Mm-hmm. The way these paths work. But I also like the whole thing with the Santecas too. Like makes me curious, like because. Like they were surprised that she was still alive.
Yep.
But they obviously at least have some suspicion that that's how the Neil are moving around.
Yeah.
And now the engineer guy is going to work for them.
Yep.
And so I wonder like what kind of spoiler they're going to be for these things, or like how they will play into all of this. Mm-hmm. Because they have some sort of knowledge of what is going on that's different than what everybody else has.
And I trust Avar and Elzar's read on them that they weren't like maliciously hiding anything. To me, it felt more like, okay, we're not going to tell them all of our crazy, weird family business about our psychotic grandmother because this is too weird. So we're just going to wait, and maybe later we'll tell them about our psychotic grandmother. It was one of those like, I'm just imagining things because it's too weird of a coincidence and not a, we're not going to tell you.
I mean, but a lot of this fits too. So you brought up the Thrawn series and books and canon too. But like the whole thing with like the area of the Ascendancy is like it's hard to get around through hyperspace because like there's so much stuff in the way and like navigating like gravity and different things. And like I like how even if it's not like a direct reference, it's all playing into kind of what we know, and not in like I never liked the sort of galactic boundary like Yuuzhan Vong kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can't go past a certain point, but it like is a different way of doing the same thing. Like where at some point navigation just gets difficult, especially a couple of 100 years before what we've usually seen so far. Yeah,
I think that's cool too. And the book did such a good job of setting all this up, because I think there was a way this book could have become way too exposition heavy, because it had so much
Mm-hmm.
that it needed to set up, but it manages to not do that. And it's something. It just there's I can't think of like a better way of saying it other than like this exploration spirit to it,
Right.
where it's like, come and discover this cool place. It was just, I'm so intrigued at what the Nile could do.
Right. Well, and so I don't know what people will think about this too, but every time they talked about Starlight Beacon, I kept thinking about Epcot. Maybe just because I've been there recently, but like they were like, yeah, we got dirt from this planet and trees from that planet, and like this is a big like cultural expo that we have here. But there's something exciting to that, at least in this point of time, because like nobody's been to these planets before, right. And it very much is like a call to adventure, like kind of thing, like almost like a Manifest Destiny frontier kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like go explore, find what's out there. And I think that's one of the things I really like about the Nihil, because just like, laws were different in the Wild West before the West was settled. Mm-hmm. Like they've been working out here in the Outer Rim, and like the Outer Rim just works different at this time. And like they've been able to like do their thing and like have this, nihilistic, we're going to do what we want because we want to like screw everything else kind of attitude.
Right.
That's like the other side of that. You have, the wide-eyed explorer, but also the jaded, I'm just going to do what I want because I can.
Right. Real quick, just to go back, now on the Starlight Beacon, I'm picturing a ride that just goes, "We are all the Republic after all." With like little like animatronic things. No, but I like that. Frontier spirit was definitely the word I used, and I think it's gonna get even wilder because I think it's XY was asking if there would be other secondary antagonists later on, because we know I don't think Claudia Gray's book is supposed to be all about the Nile. I think it's what are they called, the Drengar, the sentient plants.
Right.
Are going to be in her novel, and they're going to eventually show up in Cavan's comic, which I thought was great, because the last time we had him on the channel, I asked him about if he has a problem with plants, because he has evil plants in like almost everything he writes, and he had to have known that he was going to write that at that point, and so I was like,
well, we have a history of asking him things that come pretty close to the mark later on.
Then he can't tell us. Drengar, that's right. So I think we're going to see a lot of different things. Like the Nile will probably stay, at least for now, the primary antagonist, especially because Cavan's novel, which is like part 2, the other Del Rey novel, is called The Rising Storm, which my brain kind of went, oh, when I got to the end, because it's like storm.
Yeah.
Right, makes sense. So that one will definitely, unless they're just trying to trick us, have more about the Nile in it.
Right. I mean, I would assume that would be the case. But another thing I like that kind of fits into this too is how like the Republic doesn't have like a big military of its own, and they're like all these like regional defense kind of things. I really like that, especially because, and I think was it Jeff in the chat earlier that mentioned like the planet that they tried to blackmail and then messed it up. And like ended up like the emergence ended up destroying a big it was Ariadu. Like you have picked the wrong planet.
It was so good. Like in the end, it blew up. Kassav was a great character, and but I love at the end.
They were like, "Do you mind if we're the ones that take this ship? Like we want to make sure we get revenge." And then it's like the actual like governor lady that's like storming the bridge of this ship. Like that was big Tarkin energy right there.
So much.
Like I'm imagining her having to climb a mountain and fight apes and pick out jumpsuits.
I did like the way the Nile fought though, where they like just let out their like toxic goo from their ship.
Like, light it on fire.
Yeah. Like we're just gonna fight dirty.
Or like with the escape pods too. Like, we're going to load these things with explosives because we know all of these We Are the Republic people are going to take them in.
Okay, my one thing, this book is perfect, but my one thing with that was, did they not scan the escape pods for life forms? Or did they put, like, one poor sap in the escape pod? Be like, alright, Larry, you have to go so that they'll take this pod in, and it blew it. Because that was my thing, was like, if I would scan that thing and be like, well, there's no life forms. But anyway, that was just my thing.
I mean, they may not have those capacities, because if you think they couldn't tell that the emergencies had like refugees on there, like it was Buryaga that
that's a good
that
point.
was able to tell that.
That's a good point. Maybe I'm complaining about communication before the telephone was invented. We don't know.
Why do they have data tapes?
It's never a thing I complain about in Star Wars. Why is Jyn carrying around a thing the same size as her butt? I don't understand.
But so one of the things we haven't really talked about a lot, what did you think about like the whole like kidnapping plot?
That was
one. I'm really curious why they wanted that person, because I don't think that's random.
Right.
Like the fact that they wanted the dad.
Yeah.
Like it's not just we're kidnapping rich people for ransom. Like something's going on there.
Yep.
Also, the fact that Marchion was trying to get a Jedi.
Yeah.
Like that gives me like I want to know what's up with that, because like again that takes me back to like the new Jedi Order where like they're trying to break a Jedi.
Yep.
To like I don't know. I just had those kind of thoughts too. But also it introduces us to a couple of my other favorite characters. Like I love Master, let me just throw you off of whatever high building is available to me. And Belle, please don't let me splat against the ground, Padawan. But also, I think my second favorite character of the novel is Porter 9-Egg Stew Angle.
Yeah.
Who's like, I'm just gonna retire and go make weird stews.
Yeah.
But then also be like a literal like force of nature when battle arrives.
That whole section was really cool. And like to kind of talk about it, the book did a really interesting thing with pacing, and I kind of talked about this a bit in my review, where the first act of the book felt like a third act. And I'm a sucker for anything that's true in media res. Like, anytime you just throw me in it and hope I'll figure out what's going on is where I'm just living my best life. So that whole first act was so great. And then we get to the middle part, which is largely where that kidnapping plot took place. And it really slowed down. And it wasn't any slower than any normal Star Wars novel. It's just we went from this huge emotional buildup to, okay, this is how I kind of expected the book to start here. Like, if the book had started where part 2 starts, that's what I was expecting. So the kidnapping was really where it felt like, that's where it felt like that frontier spirit thing to me, too. Like, this is like, if we had Space Red Dead Redemption, this would have been a plot in Space Red Dead Redemption. And I was like, this is not going to end well at all for anybody.
Right.
And so I thought that was cool. I liked their little frontier house. I loved the I'm just going to throw him off of stuff.
Like, eventually he'll get it. I'll just keep throwing him off. We'll just got to find a building tall enough.
In his defense, he did have the other Jedi there to catch Belle. So,
yeah.
You know, but I felt like that would be me. I would, because I also have like a fear of falling. So I would get the master who'd be like, I'm just going to throw you off of stuff. And I would just be too terrified to think. Like, I loved how Belle was basically like, all right, this really what I'm going to learn is how to die like a Jedi, because I'm never going to learn how to fall like a Jedi.
Right. What's it? It's the Toy Story quote. I'm not flying, I'm falling
with style.
But then, like, at the end of the novel, you know, you're talking about Jedi hugs before we had started.
Yep.
Like, where he's like, well, I guess I better figure it out now, because I've got a child here, and the ground's coming up fast.
Like, hello, ground. On a Thursday. But, no bowl of petunias for you. But in seriousness, though, I really liked that part when he finally figures out how to make it work. Oh, I have to do this for others, not to stop myself. You know, the idea isn't I have to protect myself in case I fall, it's I'm going to be put in a situation, whether it's catching someone or because I have to land somewhere, where I'm going to have to save someone's life. So it's about what do I need to do to go help other people more than it is
Right.
self-preservation, which is
Well,
such a
and
Jedi.
it's really when the child that he's saving starts like repeating what he said to her
Yeah.
as like a mantra.
Oh.
Like that's when he realizes like, oh, like this is the effect that the force can have. Like it's that type of calming for a child. So like it
Yeah.
can also like save me from death.
Yeah. It's that was so cool. I loved that part. And the other Jedi hug I loved was Burry with the little boy who survived from the
Mm-hmm.
Legacy run, where he and like the little boy who like literally thought he caused the whole ship to blow up because he like snuck in to a server somewhere
To
and
steal some movies.
to steal some movies, and he thought he killed everyone, and it's like it's such a thing a child would do. And when Burry was like, did no one has no one done this? Has no one just gone up and hugged this child? I was actually like, I don't cry really when I read books. I'll cry if I'm watching something, but I'm not much of a reader and a crier, and I was like, I was crying there too. I was like, this is so sad.
The kid saw the FBI warning that says piracy is not a victimless crime, and
He was like,
he's like, "Oh,
I
I
caused
guess I'm a mass murderer."
the only logical assumption. Oh, but that part was a lot, and like it's just it's so it feels like such a thing. Like, because I think I've seen so many people talk about how, like, if Anakin had just gotten a hug somewhere along the line, like, how different could the galaxy have been?
Right.
And that's just what I kept thinking as I went through this.
Well, and I just think too, like one of the things we see a lot in Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking about Episode 2 in particular, is how intuitive like these younger Jedi are.
Yeah.
Like it's Barayaga who realizes that there are people
Yep.
on the emergences. It's Barayaga that realizes, hey, this kid knows something.
Yep.
It's it's Bell that we see figuring this out.
Yep.
It's the youngling that figures out, what's going on with the planet that Master Obi-Wan has lost. Like,
Yep.
like there really is something about that type of innocence that gives them a level of insight.
Mm-hmm.
That I think doesn't get appreciated enough.
Well, and to kind of connect to that, she's not that young. But if you go to the sequel trilogy and look at Rey, she's 19, so she's not a kid, she's not a youngling, but she's not old necessarily either. But throughout The Force Awakens, so many people are like, how can she do all of the things? But it's because she has that childlike belief still. She doesn't think she doesn't think it's impossible, so it's not. Where if you look at Luke, who is getting trained on Dagobah and Empire, his problem is he assumes things are impossible. You can't just lift a ship. Lifting a ship is totally different than lifting a rock. And Yoda's like, no, it's not how it's not how the Force works. So I think we have seen that in other ways in the movies, and it's what I liked about one of the 5 zillion things I liked about Light of the Jedi was it took things that we had seen in the films like that, and it made these big grand things. I mean, the stuff the Jedi were doing in this book is bigger than a lot of things we've seen in the films.
Right.
But at no point did it feel like it was superseding the films or rendering the films like unnecessary, or I'm not sitting there like I'm asking myself why the Jedi in the prequel trilogy can't do these things, but not in a nitpick way, but in a what happened to them. Because we were talking about this a little bit before the stream started. I don't think it was presented as these Jedi are somehow innately more powerful. Like, I don't think that Avar Kriss is more powerful than Mace Windu, for example. I think if you took Obi-Wan Kenobi and set him in this era, he'd be doing all of these things. There's some kind of difference in mindset and approach to the Force. Like, there has to be. And I think that then goes to a lot of what we see in the sequel trilogy, where Rey so instinctually can do things that in theory should be beyond her capacity, or even how she does ultimately connect to the Force in Rise of Skywalker and how she's able to be the one that finally ends Palpatine, that sort of thing.
Right.
I liked what it was able to do.
Well, and I think there are two things I want to add there. I think one, I don't think all of this is explainable by the shadow of the dark side by the time of the prequel trilogy.
Yep.
Because like that's one of the conclusions that Yoda comes to at several different points is this is way worse than we realized. Like we did not realize how limited we had become. You know, and so like they don't realize how cut off they are from the Force in this way. And I don't think all of that is explainable here. I do think there's some different perspective, like you were saying, that's involved here. But also with Rey, I don't think it's a mistake that Rey learned a lot of this from those ancient Jedi texts, which would have been that much closer and maybe that much more available during the High Republic time. Like I think it's not just her innocence and her genuine belief. And like I really do think a lot about Rey is chalked up to the fact that she just believes, you know, and unquestioningly just believes. But I think she's also like she's got Avar Chris's study notes or something that she's working with. But
you know, I'm excited to see what happens, and it's kind of a bummer because like what you're in a way because we were talking about how like they're specifically trying to get away from Jedi versus Sith, but you know the Sith could be out there somewhere. The only thing we kind of know about the Acolyte Disney Plus series is it's supposed to take place towards the end of the era. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you would use a word like acolyte, which in Star Wars is traditionally used for like a dark side acolyte. You know, you don't really, you know, there's probably some source somewhere that has a Jedi acolyte, but it's not common. So it's kind of, it's like one of those, like, this is all going to end in tears kind of things that's going to happen. Because I think that this won't be a Jedi versus Sith story, but I could really see the Sith popping up at the end, you know?
Well, and sort of to that end, what do you think about the way the novel ends with Elzar's vision? And, like, because he's seeing, like, all of these things, which he interprets as not just being metaphorical. Like, he feels like he's seeing actual things that will happen of, like, Jedi suffering and dying. And, like, this idea, which I kind of had this feeling that this is what it was going to be anyway, when they're like, this is all about what the Jedi's biggest fear is, and it's like, fear is the Jedi's biggest fear.
Yeah.
Like I felt that one coming. It's like, it was friendship all along, right? But what do you think about, like, that as a setup for whatever comes next?
It's almost like Tony's vision in Age of Ultron kind of thing, right? That Scarlet Witch gives him, and he kind of then creates it. Because, you know, it's interesting you bring up, because I've been thinking about that question for a while, of, like, what are they going to end up making it? Like, what do the Jedi fear most? And as cool as the Nihil are, it's not hyperspace skipping pirates. That's not really what they fear most. And I think it's interesting that you bring up what they fear the most is fear, because my thought is what the Jedi fear the most is themselves.
Sure.
And I don't know, I think those are different answers, but not entirely different answers. Because I think that a Jedi at some level who feels the weight and the responsibility of the galaxy will fear that they're not enough to help the galaxy. And especially when you look at something like Bell, like, surviving his fall to save someone else. Avar linking all of the Jedi to save Hetzel. What happens when one of these Jedi fail? Because we got to see them do some really good stuff, but none of the bad that happened was really because, like, there were points where like some of the Jedi died during Chapter 17. The Jedi who was supposed to take over the Starlight Beacon died because she got, like, phased by a Nihil ship.
Right.
So, like, the Jedi weren't perfect. They didn't do everything 100% of the way, but I think somewhere, whenever they get to that, like, end of the second act, dark turning point moment, I think the Jedi are going to fail drastically at something. Or
Right.
at least that's what I would do. I'm not writing Star Wars, which is probably a good thing. But because then we would get the planet of Yodas and you would not be happy. But but I think that something like that's going to happen. But I think that would go to either way. Like either the Jedi are going to be afraid, and you're always afraid of what you can't see and what you can't know. And I think that's why visions become such a big thing for Jedi. You see that in Master and Apprentice. But I think the Jedi are also going to be afraid that they're not enough. And I almost wonder if that will pull into the more reserved, pulled back Jedi that we see. Because maybe the Jedi aren't going out there and freeing all the slaves because they're afraid they can't, or they're afraid they're going to mess it up more. And so they're giving these justifications. I mean, I'm a Yoda fan, so I guess maybe it's my own bias, but I wasn't exactly against what Yoda had to say in Master and Apprentice, which was largely that's outside the Jedi's jurisdiction, and we can't go around playing judge and jury and rendering justice on these planets that aren't even in the Republic. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's easy to take that and hide behind it. It's really easy to do that.
Well, it's also really easy to see how that mindset could be a side effect of this, like a side effect of these emergences, and we are all the Republic, and like whatever the Act 2 turn in this saga is, like you can see how that could result from this. But I also think so. Like one of the things I like to, and I know we've already talked a little bit about this or a lot about this, but like with the different ways of thinking about the Force, there were several times that characters referenced the cosmic Force specifically.
Yeah.
Like the cosmic Force put me here and gave me these abilities, so I guess I'm supposed to do something with it.
Right.
And like Yoda's focus on the living Force, like may also be at least for him personally, like a side effect of what we're interpreting as maybe a shift in perspective between now and the prequel trilogy.
Well, especially because that's interesting too, because Qui-Gon has a preference for the living. Preference might not be the right word, but he focuses on the living Force too, more so than the cosmic. At least most of the time we see him. And usually Yoda is like representative of the status quo in the Jedi, and Qui-Gon is representative of what the Jedi need to get back to. But they both kind of have this more focus on one particular thing. That could take us to a whole other thing, though, if we want to, because I have so many thoughts on the living and cosmic Force and how that affects the light and the dark and all of that. That's a whole other
and eventually you'll have thoughts on the unifying Force.
Eventually. We'll get there. You say that, I gave you my plan the other day. I have a lot of things I need to read this year.
This is true. But are there anything else? So one other thing I want to mention is not a big talking point, I guess, but fire-breathing dogs.
Oh, cool. That was so good.
When Belle's like, he forgets that Ember's there, and Ember just like runs up and attacks the people. Oh, it's not. Is it Belle or is it?
No, it's the John Wick Jedi, the old man.
Yeah. I'm blanking. It starts with a P.
It's in the chat somewhere.
Every time I think about it's Porter Engel.
Porter Engel.
Every time I think about it, I want to say Pong Krill, and I'm like, no, bad, not Pong Krill.
Every time they bring him up, I just think of Kruk from Legends, and I don't even know if they're the same species. But I'm always like, it's the guy with the hat, and I don't know. I just remember Kruk's hat.
But like I love that scene where Ember just runs up and just like attacks these people.
Yeah.
And then like you realize why his name is Ember, because he breathes fire. It's a dog. It's a dragon dog.
Yeah. So good. And that was just little things like that made the book feel so different. Because I talked a little bit about this in my review also, but it'd be kind of nice to expand on, is this book had a lot it had to do, whether or not the book or Charles Soule was thinking about that as he was writing. Certainly the story group would have been thinking about it. And that it's it has two things it has to do for two very different audiences. On the one hand, you have the kind of either new canon fans or fans who haven't gotten into expanded canon at all, and they're and introduce them to a Star Wars space and time that we haven't seen in current canon, right? We haven't gone back any earlier than really the flashbacks in Dooku Jedi Lost, I think. And well, except for like moment flashbacks in Soul stuff, but like that's not setting up a world. That's just backstory and stuff. So you have to do that. You have to take a group of people and be like, here's an entirely new space and make it new. But then you have fans like us who have read Legends material and have some semblance of some idea of what was going on in the galaxy in Legends. And you need to find a way to make it different, but not in a, I'm going to intentionally make it the opposite. If it was square in Legends, I'm going to make it round in new canon so that it's different.
Right.
You know, it didn't feel like he was doing that. Nothing felt like it was a response to Legends, or even though it definitely changes things that were in Legends, it didn't feel like an overwrite. It had to feel so new that people who already had an idea in their head could feel completely immersed in something that hadn't come before, but not so overwhelming that if you've never taken this journey before, that you could still get in it. And that's really what impressed me with the world building, is that I don't know how to say it any other way than how I just said it, but that's what I liked about it.
Right, and I think they do a really good job. Like you can see the evidence of the work that this group of authors has done, and like I don't know that they have every plot point sketched out for the entire run, and even if they do, those things could change between now and when stuff is published. I mean, like we know the MJO changed over time, like entire character arcs changed. But you can tell that that's the level of work that they have done to establish this this corner of the universe as like a point in time, like they have done that amount of world building for themselves, so that they have a fully realized like idea of what this world is, and they are writing from that perspective. And then, like you said, this could have been way more exposition heavy than it was, but it just kind of lets you jump into it. Not just in media res, so you just find yourself in a a galactic tragedy all of a sudden, but like you're just in the world, and there's not a lot of like explanation for what the world is. They just toss you into it and introduce you to it as you go along.
I thought that was really well done, and it's something that's very unique in Star Wars, because even when you look at something like the NJO, you had a lot of authors on that, but they didn't all necessarily sit down and plan it start to finish.
Right.
They weren't in, like, as near as I've been able to gather from stuff I've read, it's not like this where literally I've watched interviews with the 5 authors and they say they have a Slack chat, and they're like constantly in communication in the collaborative nature. You have there was the Clone Wars multimedia project, it was called, which is before the Clone Wars TV show. It was when, like, in the micro series days, and those all had different novels. Those authors weren't talking to each other at all. They were just kind of relying on what was the version of the story group at the time. We've never had a project where they just said, okay, here are the authors, we're going to put them in a room and see what they come up with. I mean, they had the 5 authors before they knew they were going to do High Republic. And that's just incredible to me. And I think, even though this is Charles Soule's novel, and I don't want to take any credit away from him, because he's a talented writer. We've seen his writing in Star Wars before that was really good. I'm like, this is so much him. But I think that extra spark, that thing that takes it from here to here, or like really like from here to here, is that collaboration. And I kind of felt that. I know you haven't finished A Test of Courage, but I got that same vibe from that. I've enjoyed Cavan's comic, but there's only the one issue out, so it feels a little unfair to compare Cavan's Marvel series to 2 whole books, because we've gotten
Right.
1/6 of the story he's going to tell
Right.
just in that first story arc. So as much as I liked it, I don't think it's fair to include it in the conversation because it's not done. But it's that level of collaboration, I think, just adds something special.
Right. Well, and I think 2 other things that it makes me think of. One, I love the idea that this is how they are investing in new canon, right? Not just in terms of stories, but in terms of authors. Like creating a story group is not the right word for it, but like these are the authors, and we're just going to let them not necessarily just have full reign over this, but like they're going to be like this is their thing, and we're going to invest in them and their creative abilities. But I also really like it on a different note, because like it feels like our channel is kind of connected to this.
Yeah.
Because like all of this grew out of FactPov.
Yeah.
And like our YouTube presence grew out of FactPov. And like we started talking to several of these people because of FactPov.
Yeah.
Like it just, I don't know. I like it because it feels like we are kind of connected to it in a way. In ways that, like for some people, and I don't begrudge them this, but for some people, like Legends was Star Wars to them, and they have not been able to be as enthusiastic about new canon because it's just not their bag, right? And if that's somebody, I can't, whatever.
Yeah.
People like the things they like, and they don't like the things they don't like. But because that's who we have been as a channel, even though we've done Legend stuff too, like I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm a part of it in a way.
Well, I get that too, and like obviously everyone has their kind of their own thing, but I just remember like when they announced this and they said like the first wave who was going to get to do what, I got so excited that Kevin Scott got a Marvel comic, even though I read books more than I read comics, so part of me is like, I mean, I got really jazzed when they announced he got a novel too down the road, but I just know because we've talked to him before and know that comics are really like what he really, really likes, and to get to do like a Marvel line, I was like, oh, this is cool. And not that like, I mean, I like through Celebration Chicago, I've met 2 of the 5, one of whom she does not remember that she met me at all, I'm sure. So it's not like these are like our super best friends or anything, but it's cool as fans knowing that the people writing this are fans and getting to see kind of like them live out this dream, really. Like who as a Star Wars fan wouldn't be excited to be like, oh, you're gonna craft the next wave of Star Wars storytelling. So it's fun because these are authors that kind of, we saw them come into the fandom and start writing, and it's, whether with Cavan, we started with him with Adventures in Wild Space, really, and then seeing Charles Soule's comics. I love Justina Ireland's Lando's Luck from the Flight of the Falcon series. I try to anybody who just wants some kind of like, especially a Lando book, I'm like, don't pass on that because it's middle grade, because that was so good. And then DJO had Last Shot, which in both FactPovs, and then Claudia Gray just kind of hit the ground running. She somehow wrote like one of the most popular novels from the start, as Claudia can do.
I think 3 of my probably top 10 Star Wars new canon novels are every single one of them would be in that level for me.
I mean, like for a long time, my favorite one was Bloodline, and then we got Master and Apprentice, so it was like, well, she replaced herself with herself. And then I'm just waiting for Into the Dark. So we'll see. But no, it's been cool. And I'm excited to see where this project goes. And I think this was the perfect launching point for it. I think it set up the stakes of what's ahead so well. It set up the feel of what's ahead so well. And I like it. Obviously, you could do it because it's the earliest novel to date, but I also feel like if somebody was like, hey, I want to get into Star Wars, what's a really great way to get into Star Wars books? It's like, just start with High Republic. rather than get into. And I mean, obviously, I like the new canon stuff, and I wouldn't tell people not to read it. But that gets so complicated. Of like, well, do you like this kind of character? Do you like that? Versus now it's you can you just be like, no, just get into this new era where there's kind of a little bit of everything in this book.
Right. Yeah. Is there anything that we've forgotten?
Let me look at my list.
I know you had actual notes for today.
And I wrote them like 2 weeks ago when I finished Light of the Jedi, because I was like, I do not want to forget to bring these things up. No, we kind of got to it. We talked about the Jedi and stuff. How about this? How long do you think this Republic, such as it, we were kind of talking about this with the Chancellor, but we didn't really talk about it with the Republic as a whole. Like, do you see this kind of great works era of the Republic as sustainable? Like, do you see this, like, does the end of the age of the High Republic come because the ways of the High Republic can't sustain themselves, or does it come because of some sort of disaster from outside enemies? I don't, maybe there's not a difference.
I mean, honestly, I think the way I interpret it now, and this could change as we go along, is that it changes because the galaxy gets settled.
Yeah.
Right? Like, by the time of the prequel, like, there aren't a lot of places that aren't, there may not be members of the Republic, but like everything, like the Outer Rim is not outer. It's available and accessible in a way. And so I feel like it changes because, like, there's no more frontier. Right? There's no more, manifest destiny because we built the railroads and we settled the West Coast and like that type of thing. It changes because the situation changes.
It's kind of like my economic stimulus plan for the U.S. is we should add states, so we should have to reprint all the flags because that will create like a sudden need of a lot of like manufacturing if we just have to reprint every flag. Again, this is why I'm not in charge of anything.
I mean, to be fair, the two of the very big things I want to see happen are the statehoods for Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico.
And I'm just like, good, we can reprint the flags, so everybody wins. No, I think it's something kind of similar to that. I think whenever I see something like this, and like this is a situation that works because there's nothing there to challenge it. Like you can pretty much only go around and build big starlight beacons, or they talked about how the next wave of stuff that's going to come out, Cavan's novel and DJO's middle grade, are going to tie into like a big expo, like a big World's Fair. And that kind of thing works when you're at peace, and this is Star Wars. So, to me, if there were no Nihil, if there were no Sith,
right,
a republic like this could work, especially if you had a good chancellor who would actually make sure everything's getting shifted around correctly, but at a certain point, someone has to pick which backwater world that isn't providing resources gets to have a starlight beacon, and at some point that gets political. And so it's something that feels like it really works on paper to me, and can work with the correct leadership. But for me, it's like, okay, this is going to last until they don't have the correct leadership, and it's going to work until somebody like the Nihil show up, and they're like, we're just going to blow all this cool stuff up, actually. Because we don't want you to have an antenna.
I mean, and like the practicalities of it being expensive might come into play eventually too, if not everyone buys into the "We Are All the Republic" slogan. Like you may not be able to afford it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you don't have the money to build a starlight beacon if you have to build Venator class starships because you're at war. Right. This is, then you have a very different industrial complex that you have to feed.
Right.
And again, it's called Star Wars, so like we know where this is headed, and so I think that there will be some sort of parallel between the Jedi and the Republic, because I think there often is. But I think what will ultimately happen to the Republic is it will have to shift because it will get enemies and it will have to make a decision as an entity then.
Right. Well, I mean, and we don't know what time period we're talking about here.
Yeah.
We know generally where this fits in relation to
the movies,
to the prequel trilogy, but like we don't know if this saga of books and comics is going to cover, 5 years or 50 years or 500 years. Like we don't know like what the span of time this will take up will be.
Right. I agree. And how quickly all of this happens. And I mean, right now it seems like the planetary defense fleets are holding their own against the Nile, but we also know that the Eye didn't unleash everything. And inevitably, once you get one enemy that kind of makes the Republic bleed, then you get the other people who go, well, the Republic kind of bled a little bit. Maybe we could make it bleed a little bit. And then it's a lot harder to fight a war against, 7 or 8 enemies than it is against one other big force, and that could be something they have to watch out for too.
Right.
And they're kind of hinting at that with the sentient plants, so we'll see what goes on. Remember that the Sith in Red Harvest that was like a tree?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like in the library,
yeah.
Who had like grown into the walls or something.
Yeah. That was Red Harvest. I will always love that book. I will always love my zombie tauntauns. Spitting infected loogies.
That's such a wild thing,
it's
too.
Such a weird book. That has nothing to do with Light of the Jedi, but sometimes I just sit here and think about Red Harvest. But no, I think those are all my big points. I know there were like 500 other little things I kept wanting to talk about anytime we brought up everything. What's going to happen with the Santecas. I don't know. I liked the idea. It ended up not being this, but I liked the question somebody asked at one point, and I can't remember who it was, but they asked, like, was hyperspace sick? And, like, could hyperspace be sick? And obviously that's not what ended up happening, but it was such an intriguing idea.
Right.
Of, like, what if hyperspace kind of disintegrated? And we could still see something like that, because we don't know what the effects the paths are going to have when you use them a lot.
Well, and this will matter not to you at all, but, like, that's the thing in the last, the season of Star Trek Discovery that just ended, is that light speed travel has basically been, like, eliminated for all practical purposes and long distances, and that changed things because, like, you couldn't travel the way you used to be able to.
Interesting. It also makes me think of Bloodburn, which was in Bloodline and Rebel Rising, where, like, when you've been to hyperspace too many times, it screws with you. It makes you sick. So that was a thing I'm curious to just see if it involves in any way.
I mean, and, like, to the extent that this might be similar to the Chiss Skywalkers, like the fact that that ability fades over time compared to Granny Santeca, doing this advanced age.
And what do you think? The end of the book also involves Loden, I'll throw you out of a ship, Great Storm. What do you think? Like, what are your predictions on what happens with it? Do you think he ultimately makes it? Does he get to be there for Belle's delayed knighting ceremony? Or are we just biding our time until we have to watch him die?
I think it's going to be like a Old Republic, like Revan, like just tossed in a cell somewhere trying to break him kind of thing. Or who was the Jedi like that I mentioned earlier that got captured in New Jedi Republic or the New Jedi Order? I don't remember the kid's name. It was like one of the teenagers.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember his name either.
But like I think it's going to be something like that where he is like kept and tortured and like trying to break him, or maybe they end up using him like as some kind of reverse battle meditation something.
And
I mean, or maybe he's trying to slot him in case Granny Santeca dies, like to use,
That's what I was wondering too, because when we were talking about her earlier, and how if it's the Force is somehow connected to how she can see the paths, maybe he's thinking of using a Jedi to keep her alive. Oh, but the way they kept him captured by they didn't really torture him, they just tortured people around him so he couldn't think straight. How wild was that?
And Kreia would love that.
Kreia would love that. She'd be all over that. But I thought that was so genius because I was like, how are they going to justify keeping this guy locked up after everything we've been able to see him do? And I'm like, oh, that's how.
Yeah.
That's how you catch a Jedi. Jeff says if Loden doesn't make it, he's going to write a very angry letter to Del Rey Publishing. I think we all will sign it. I at least need him to see Belle again. Like, if they never encounter each other in the land of the living again, I'm going to be very disappointed, regardless of how that goes.
I mean, he did say his goodbyes to Belle. Like, I need you to jump out of this ship, but I'm proud of you and I love you. Bye.
Yep. XY is wondering if he could get broken and become like a dark Jedi. I think that's possible. I think it could be a test for Belle. I think Belle could... I could see it being one of those things where, like, Belle finds him and rescues him, but then Loden has to die so Belle can get away. And so then, like, that's part of, like, that failure thing that Jedi might have to face.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many ways it could go, and I like that I don't know. I am excited. Right. And I'm just curious to see where this is going to go. Like, where are we going to see these characters again? Are they going to keep it, like, Del Rey... Like... Avar pops up in the High Republic comic, and I know some of the characters are crossing over. Skier's obviously in High Republic and Light of the Jedi. Vernestra from Test of Courage is mentioned at the end of Light of the Jedi, so there's a little bit of crossover here. But I kind of wonder, like, are these characters largely going to be like the Del Rey characters are in the Del Rey books, and the middle grade characters are in the middle grade books? Even though we know the next middle grade novel with DJO has different characters in it, so like I just don't want it. I trust the people involved, so I'm not really actively worrying about this, especially because the sales on High Republic went into a third printing. This book was New York Times bestseller. Test of Courage was #2 for middle grade. Like, they're selling well. But I just don't want it to be a thing where, like, and then we never saw Loden again because they never wrote that book. You know, I don't want that to happen.
I can't imagine it would be that way, just because even though we've been introduced to a lot of characters, we weren't introduced to, like, every Jedi that existed at the time. Like, I felt like they were giving us specific things.
I just think back to, like, we still don't know what happens in Lost Stars 2. Like, that got left off. Like, there's just this... There's a little bit of a habit with Lucasfilm Publishing right now to be like, here's some great characters... We're going to not tell you what happens to them, and then they never got the sequel. And I just, I don't want that to happen.
Let's name drop the droid Gotra in literally everything we published for a couple of years.
I just never...
Or just never tell me what happens to Rey Sloane.
Right. Where is she?
Somebody should make a video about that.
And, like, yes, she was in Squadrons, but that's still, like, before she disappeared.
Right, yeah.
We still don't know what happened after she disappeared.
Also, completely random thing, I didn't realize Yariel Poof was that old.
Yeah. I was like, man, Yoda's gonna be, like, the one connective tissue character. And it's like, nope, Yariel Poof's there. And he was, like, so serious, and he had some, like, really poignant lines. But I just kept seeing his robot chicken story.
I forgot about that.
With, like, the mustache. He's on the Death Star with him. But I just, like, randomly remember robot chicken sketches all the time. Because I always wanted Broom Boy to be the child of the janitor that always shows up in the robot chicken sketches and is, like, sweeping people out of the holes.
Yeah.
They won't. Again, this is why I don't write Star Wars.
One of our old forum members was an animator on Robot Chicken.
He was. That is true. X-Boy says another idea I have is Avar's ability accidentally messes with the Drengir since they are supposedly connected to the Force. Oh, like she kind of wakes them up. Not to spoil High Republic 1 before Django reads it, but something like that with the Starlight Beacon happens in that comic too, so kind of... And XY is also pretty salty about the Gatra and Sloane. Gatra got name dropped in this season of Mando, though.
Mando, yeah.
There's a droid in A Test of Courage when you read it, and I really want that droid to start the droid Gatra. It would make me happy. Other than like just going back and elaborating on some of the 900 things we said, I think that's really all of the new stuff I have.
Yeah. And I think we're going to have more opportunity to talk about some of these things.
For
this
sure.
This is just the beginning.
And I think like once we get through Into the Dark, which is Claudia's book, obviously we'll talk about all these things individually too, but the first 6 issues of Cavan's comic, I think it would be fun to kind of look back at all of the... Well, I don't know how many issues are in the first arc of DJO's comic either, but like once like all of the first wave of things that are announced are kind of through their first thing. It's a little bit harder with the Marvel and Star Wars Adventure comics because those will be just ongoing. But I think it'd be cool to kind of revisit the launch from all of the different mediums.
For sure.
But yeah, so thank you guys for being here. If you're watching and haven't already, I'd really appreciate it if you would like the stream. We're going to settle in on trying to make a streaming schedule, which will probably go as well as it did in the past. But it'll be like, for Django and I, the best day is Tuesday and Thursdays. So we're going to try for something as often as we can. I won't say once a week, because knowing us, it won't do that. But we're going to try for something, but Tuesday or Thursday around this time-ish.
Weekly as frick.
And then there may be things on Fridays. Because as you saw last year, we had a lot of Gina and Ray on the streams, and I still want to make that happen, but schedules are schedules. So it'll probably be Django and I as regular as we ever were on a Tuesday or Thursday, and then probably some random occasional Friday things where I'll drag other people here. But that's kind of where we're at. We're still in the middle of a book club for Dark Disciple, if you guys want to read that. And I'll be reviewing other stuff as it comes out. Last year I was a little slack on the reviews because I didn't read anything timely as it came out. And I don't suspect anybody really wants me to review like something several months later. So I'm going to just try to be more on the game this year, but we should be doing more stuff. And eventually Django's going to remind me that we need to keep reading in JO. We haven't given up on that.
Also, I know you don't plug this as often, but if you're not aware, Jess has a completely separate channel where she streams other games. So check that out. It's a lot of fun. You come hang out for stuff like Dishonored and Stardew and
we're doing 2 of my college friends and I, we're gonna, as regularly as we can, we're playing Stardew Valley and talking about WandaVision on Sundays. So that's youtube.com/YodahBauer. So if you know me here, it's just YouTube. But thank you. I always do forget to plug that. I'm also playing Deus Ex Mankind Divided on there right now, which is fun. But yeah, thank you all for being here, and we will see you all around. All the High Republic authors always say for light and life, but I like to say ride the storm, and enjoy your time out there. Hey, Bosk Bounty and Steve! Oh my gosh, you guys coming in at the end. Bosk, you were signing off, but I hope you're doing well. And hi, Steve! But we're all signing off. But it's good to see you guys. Yeah, sorry. But I hope you all are doing well. And the stream will be here waiting for you. But we'll be back with more stuff later. But thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
Guys.
Bye.